I'm Constance. I am presenting Parenting Genie in the lactation department. So I'm a lactation consultant, and I've been a lactation consultant for nearly 29 years now. So all sorts of breastfeeding. Hello, everybody who's coming on now. Oh, from Townsville. So you're actually in Australia. Fantastic, Lisa. I never knew that. Yeah. So anyway, so all sorts of lactation, and always remember you can go through the Parenting Genie website and you can put questions in there, but you can also make appointments and have a consultation if there's anything that you'd like to know more. So tonight's talk is about breastfeeding and contraception. Now, I just assume that most of you who are watching this live have already become mothers. And if you haven't become mothers, then this is important for you too, because the question will come up at some stage: what can I do to reduce my fertility after having had a baby? So just to give you a few stats, if you are interested. Now, if you are a non-lactating woman after you've given birth, your ovulation will return after 4 to 6 weeks. And as you possibly know, is that when you start ovulating again after you've had a baby, then you are fertile, so you can become pregnant again. So 20% of mothers who exclusively breastfeed, they will get their first menstruation or their first period by about 6 months. 60% of women do not ovulate before their first period after they have given birth to a baby. So the risk of pregnancy when the ovulation has reoccurred is still reasonably low, like 7%. And the reason for that is if you have your first bleed after you've given birth before 6 months or any time around that time, you've ovulated, but it's actually called a defective ovulation. And what is a defective ovulation? It's got to do with your hormones, and particular with one of the hormones that actually is there to help implant an egg and to actually also to become pregnant. So implantation. So that's just a few little things to be aware of. Now, your best option that has no side effects and has no impact on lactation or your breastfeeding is obviously natural family planning. Naturally family planning identifies the changes in the vaginal mucus and changes in the temperature, and it determines fertile days. And when you have determined fertile days, you would need to be abstinent if you were going to avoid getting pregnant. The majority of mothers that I know do not want to rely on natural family planning these days. They do use it often to get pregnant, but they often don't use it to avoid pregnancy. So what else have we got if we just had a baby and we're breastfeeding? Now you will be surprised because you may not know about this. So we have LAM. LAM is the abbreviation, LAM, for lactation amenorrhea. That's a very jargon word, but amenorrhea means you basically haven't got a period. And the method. So breastfeeding, no period, and that's the method. And of course people will say to you, breastfeeding, that's not kind of protective. You can get pregnant. And yes, that's correct, but LAM is different. So LAM, or lactation amenorrhea method, means you can use it in the first 6 months if you are exclusively breastfeeding day and night. Your baby is not using a pacifier, is not getting extra milk, whether it's expressed or formula milk. So you're breastfeeding day and night. You're not actually having nights where the baby sleeps through the night. So you need to have at least sort of 6 to 8 breastfeeds in 24 hours. Lots of suckling. And yes, and you have not actually had a bleed. So that method, and you can look that up, it's well researched, it's 98% effective in the first 6 months. What happens at 6 months is that, first of all, babies don't necessarily feed as often anymore, and also they start on solids. They may start on solids earlier, but we always presume that if we go by the best guidelines, the WHO or the World Health Organization's guidelines, then babies will start solids around that time. And yes, you continue breastfeeding because it's still the best food, but they need extra. So, okay, so if that's not your go, the lactation embryo method, or if you have received, you've had your first period, then obviously that you can't use it anymore. So what you can use is barrier methods, male or female condoms or diaphragms. So it's a possibility. But again, it may not be what you want. So then what else can you use? You could use an IUCD, which is what also is called a copper coil. And the pregnancy rate with this coil in your uterus that gets inserted is 0.8%. So very, very low chance that you could get pregnant. And there's no negative effects on breastfeeding. And it is recommended that you do not get it inserted before 6 weeks after you have had your baby. At least that's the recommendations in Australia. So we've got a question here. Hi there. What would the ideal time be giving birth before getting pregnant again? Well, that's a really fantastic question. Thank you, Anya, for that. I mean, the best birthing space is always roughly 2 years. So because then you've given birth, you've breastfed, and your body has probably gone back to pre-pregnancy and pre-breastfeeding state, and you are not actually depleted of all the things that you are giving when you're breastfeeding your baby. Having said that, there is also mothers who are getting pregnant whilst they're breastfeeding, and they don't have to give up breastfeeding, but that's a topic for another time. I can discuss that another time, but thank you for the question. So that's really good. So going back to the methods. So if you get an IUCD or a copper coil inserted before 6 weeks, there is a higher risk of expulsion. So you could just lose it. So yeah. And then we're going to go to the hormonal contraception. And I don't know what it's like in wherever you are, in which country, or which, but here in Australia, if you give birth in a hospital, and the majority of women will give birth in a hospital, on the day they get discharged, their midwife does give them a discharge talk, talks about, kind of contraception, and maybe a doctor comes and writes a script. The script is usually for the progesterone-only pill, also called mini pill. And they usually say you can start it straight away. The chances that you are going to have intercourse after you've just given birth to a baby are very rare, because usually you're still bleeding and you might be sore and you may not even have an appetite for, having intimacy or so, because you're just getting used to your new baby. So the recommendation, even from the WHO, the World Health Organization, is to not start until roughly 6 weeks. That would coincide with your postnatal check with either your midwife or your doctor, to make sure that everything has healed again and your uterus is back to where it was before you got pregnant. And also you would have actually established a robust, good milk supply, because that is really, really important. Because a lot of the hormonal contraceptives are always a bit, I shouldn't say dodgy, but there's always that risk that you may not establish your milk supply well, or that maybe the milk supply can go down, even with a progesterone-only pill. So always remember, establish a well milk supply, a good milk supply, a robust milk supply, have plenty of milk, and then maybe consider starting your contraceptive. But obviously before you are going to start, having, sex or intercourse again as well. That's important, yeah. So the mini pill or progesterone only pill must be taken daily, as you know, and it must be taken at the same time. It leaves you a little bit of a window, it's within a 3-hour sort of radius. And it is thought to not interfere with lactation. However, we have anecdotal evidence that for some women it can actually reduce their milk supply. It's recommended not to start before 6 weeks when the milk supply is fully established. So I've just said that, but I'm just reading my notes again that I've have written up for it, okay, to make sure that I don't forget anything. Then you can do the implants as well. So there is the progesterone only implants. Again, recommended to start at 6 weeks after you've given birth to a baby, and there is no apparent effect on the supply or the infant growth as well, because with some contraceptives, oral contraceptives, we need to also monitor the infant growth if it's given too early. So, and then of course you have the other IUDs, so intrauterine devices that can be used, that have hormones involved in it. And usually it is suggested that they do not interfere with milk supply. Then there's something else. There is the emergency contraception. So what is emergency contraception? It is a single dose of progesterone, one of the hormones, that has to be given within 72 hours after you have had unprotected intercourse. So, and that again, there is no restriction to breastfeeding, and it's thought that it does not interfere with anything with your baby's breastfeeding. Some mothers are getting prescribed the combined hormonal contraceptive, which is the combined pill that has got estrogen and progesterone. So far I've been talking about progesterone only, which has always been considered to be the best for lactating or breastfeeding mothers. The combined hormonal contraceptive, or like the pill or the ring, there's a ring that can be inserted as well, is, according to the World Health Organization's guidelines, not to be used until the baby is 6 months old. Again, because it could interfere with growth of the baby or also with the milk supply. So, so they are pretty much all the things that I wanted to talk to you about today. I'm just going to go through a few of my other notes here to see if I've got something else that I can do, can discuss. Of course, you have the Depo-Provera. You can actually have the things that you can get under your skin. I'm sorry, I've lost my thread now. The progesterone injection, can be given as well, and again, it's not supposed to interfere with breastfeeding, but with the progesterone injection, it's given every 3 months, and again, it's recommended not to use until 6 weeks after birth. And the recommendations are also, if you are going for the 3 months progesterone injection that is given every 12 weeks or every 3 months, might be a good idea to start with the oral ones first to see how you react to it, because it's easier to stop. When you've got the injections in, you've got a long-lasting effect of it, and you can't just take it out of your body again. So just in case it does affect you in any way. And in all the recommendations, it says clinicians should suggest that the mother establishes a good milk production prior to beginning oral contraceptives. So that's the main message for tonight. Always making sure that you've got a good established milk supply. And if you are a mother who has given birth before and you have had issues with your milk supply and you're having your second baby, it may be a good idea not to start straight away with any contraceptive pill of any sort before you actually have a good supply established. So yeah, so that's pretty much my talk, my live talk for tonight. If you want to pop any questions into the comment section, that's fine. And again, I just said to you, you know, if you want to know more, you can always make an appointment through the website. And also remember that sometimes when you are, not just sometimes, when you are breastfeeding, and that's a different topic again, you could have vaginal dryness, and then being on the contraceptives, that can even cause a little bit more of that. So you may need to also have some kind of ways to, you know, to help you to feel better with intercourse or with intimacy. And again, like I said, that's a talk for another time. So yeah, so just to go through it again, just so you know. So we do have lactation amino method, can be used if you're fully breastfeeding, if you have not had menstruation or a period coming back, and you're exclusively breastfeeding day and night, no pacifiers, you can use that. What are ways to stop your milk if you have decided to stop breastfeeding? Well, that is a talk for another time, and I've actually gone through that. I've had a live talk, so if you may go through some of my talks beforehand, but you can stop by not stimulating anymore and by using cold packs, and yeah. So and you also could use some peppermint tea or some sage tea. They are herbs that can reduce milk supply if you want to stop breastfeeding. But as I said, that's not what my talk is about today, and I've done that talk about stopping breastfeeding. But again, you can always get some advice when you go through our website at Parenting Genie. Yeah, so lactation amino method, and just to give you a little bit of an idea, there is still some tribes in this world who have the desire to have as many babies as possible. And they don't actually have that many babies. They have on average only 4 or 5. And always remembering that in birth control, I mean, having lots of babies in a society where there is no superannuation and no pension and no healthcare and so on. So these people, they breastfeed for a very long time, and so they have not as much fertility. So they do use breastfeeding as a form of reducing their fertility. I'm not saying contraception, but reducing fertility. And so we always need to make sure that we do make sure you need to know about these sort of things. Because not everybody in this world has access to chemical contraception or to devices that you can insert into your uterus that release hormones to give you the chance to reduce your fertility. Yeah, so if there's no more questions, then we're pretty much at the end of it. Please always comment if you have also got some more. I'm so happy when you're commenting on something or even asking questions. That's great. And even if the questions are not always relevant to my talk, I'm still happy to answer them. And yeah, it's if there is any topic that you would like to be having discussed at my next live in 2 weeks' time, then please let me know. And there is family planning clinics all over the world as well. So you do have access to people who you can see. There's family planning nurses, and they can discuss the right contraception whilst you're a breastfeeding mother. And if you do get pregnant whilst you're breastfeeding, there is no reason that you have to stop breastfeeding. But many mothers will be doing that because they often feel quite nauseous. You know, that nausea that you get in early pregnancy, and so you may not actually feel like having a baby or a toddler breastfeeding at the time. And also what we know is that the milk changes, and sometimes the baby actually stops breastfeeding and the mother doesn't actually know why, and sometimes it's because she's actually pregnant again. And so that is a possibility. Now, what actually happens is, and I'm just briefly discussing it because we still got a little bit of time. So if you do get pregnant whilst you're breastfeeding, as said, you do not have to stop breastfeeding, but you may not feel like wanting to continue to breastfeed. But the interesting thing is that your milk will actually go back to colostrum. So at 16 weeks of pregnancy, you are starting to produce colostrum again. So you are actually preparing for that new baby, or your body is preparing for that new baby. And maybe at some stage I do a live Facebook Live on tandem feeding, because some mothers will continue breastfeeding right through their pregnancy and have the new baby and feed both. So that's called tandem feeding, and that's not unusual for some mothers. It is a personal choice. And the interesting thing is that the older child would actually also get colostrum again, and not mature breast milk when the second baby is born. Yes, so many interesting things when it comes to breastfeeding, and they're always discovering new things again as well. Okay, so if there's no more questions in the comment section, then you can obviously watch the recorded version. It's up on Facebook for, I think, 4 weeks. And again, if you do have any special questions, also go through the website parentinggenie.com, and yeah, have a look there, make an appointment. But there's also some good breastfeeding information on there. So have a look. And on that message, or on that note, I should say, I hope you're all well. If you're pregnant, then I hope you're well. If you're new mothers or not so new mothers, please look after yourself and look after your babies, and yeah, make sure that you get lots of rest and seek help whenever needed, because it's just such an amazing thing you're doing for your babies to feed them. Okay. On that note, I say goodbye. See you in about a few weeks' time.